Hello everyone, my name is David. Today we are going to take a look at another horrible case with you. In the southern part of India lies the beautiful state of Karnataka, known for its vibrant cities, ancient temples, and lush green landscapes. Within this state is the Udupi district, a place famous for its religious significance and deeply rooted traditions. And within this district, far from the bustling cities, lies Ajakar, a peaceful rural village surrounded by dense greenery and narrow winding roads. Life here moves at a slow pace, where everyone knows everyone. But one day this calmness was shattered when a horrifying crime was uncovered in the village, leaving the entire community in shock. In this village of Ajakar lived a 44-year-old man named Balakrishna Pujari. Balakrishna and his family had faced many struggles in life, but he never gave up. Through his hard work, he even managed to establish his own hotel. Apart from Balakrishna, his parents and siblings also lived in the house, and in 2007, Balakrishna married a woman named Pratima. This small family, where both his brother and sister had jobs, was neither very poor nor extremely wealthy. As a result, their life was going smoothly, and being part of a middle-income group, they were quite content with their way of living. As time passed, Balakrishna and his wife Pratima had 2 children, but as their children grew older, the expenses of their schooling, including tuition fees, admission costs, and transportation, became an added burden on Balakrishna's shoulders. In the midst of this, to support her husband and secure a better future for their children, Pratima decided to start working as well. She then told her husband, Balakrishna Pujari, that she wanted to work so they could manage their household expenses more efficiently. Upon hearing this, Balakrishna advised her, "Instead of doing a job, you could start your own business. You can take a beauty parlor course." Following this, Pratima enrolled in a beauty parlor course near her home. After a few months, when she completed her course, Balakrishna Pujari rented a shop near their house. He also spent some of his savings to buy various cosmetic products for the store. From then on, Pratima was no longer just a housewife. She was also a businesswoman. Inspired by her husband, she worked hard in the beginning and built a customer base in the nearby areas. However, like every married couple, Balakrishna and Pratima had their share of arguments and conflicts. But since they were bound by the sacred bond of marriage, had separate businesses, and were raising children together, their fights usually resolved within a day or two. However, when their arguments didn't settle easily, Pratima's brother, Sandeep, had to step in. Sandeep was someone who shared a great bond with his brother-in-law, and Balakrishna also considered him a close friend. Their friendship was so strong that relatives and people from their neighborhood often spoke of it as an example. They shared everything from small matters to significant decisions. That's why whenever Balakrishna and Pratima had a dispute, Sandeep would step in, talk to both of them, and resolve their conflicts in no time. Time was passing slowly, and during this period, Balakrishna and Pratima's marriage was going perfectly fine. They had been married for 17 years, but then suddenly, in August 2024, Balakrishna's health started to deteriorate. He was experiencing continuous vomiting, and his fever refused to subside. Initially, neither he nor his family paid much attention to it, assuming it might be due to a change in weather. Because of this, they didn't take it too seriously and continued consulting a local doctor near their home. At times, Balakrishna would feel better, but after some time, his health would worsen again. However, when this pattern continued for an extended period, they decided to take Balakrishna to a more qualified doctor for a thorough checkup. So they went to a hospital, and as soon as they arrived, the doctors admitted Balakrishna to the emergency ward. He underwent multiple tests, and initially the doctors suspected jaundice. Based on this diagnosis, they prescribed medications and prepared a complete diet plan for Balakrishna, but none of it seemed to work, and his condition did not improve. The doctors at that hospital were unable to determine what illness he was suffering from. Due to this uncertainty, they referred Balakrishna to Venlock District Hospital in Mangaluru, located about 35 miles from Udupi. It's worth mentioning that Venlock District Hospital is a well-known medical facility in Mangaluru. However, even after receiving treatment at that hospital for several days, the doctors couldn't diagnose Balakrishna's illness. Eventually, they informed his family, saying, "We are unable to determine his condition, so you should take him to another hospital." Balakrishna's family then tried 4 to 5 different hospitals, but his health remained inconsistent, sometimes improving, only for him to relapse into repeated vomiting. This ordeal had begun in August, and before they knew it, October had arrived. However, in October, Balakrishna's condition showed slight improvement. On October 19th, 2024, around 9 a.m., doctors at a hospital in Bengaluru, approximately 250 miles from Udupi, informed Balakrishna's parents and his wife that he was now stable and could be taken home. Following the doctor's advice, Balakrishna and his family embarked on an 8-hour journey back home that same day. When they arrived home on October 19th, their family was overjoyed that Balakrishna had finally recovered. However, the past 2 months had been extremely stressful, as he had been admitted to 4 or 5 different hospitals. Not only was his immediate family distressed, but many of their relatives were also deeply worried. Additionally, Pratima's brother, Sandeep, was especially concerned. So, when they all learned that Balakrishna had been discharged from the hospital, they gathered at his home. Since most of Balakrishna's relatives and even Pratima's family lived nearby, everyone had arrived by around 8 p.m. Some relatives felt that since Balakrishna had returned home after such a long time, they should stay back to take care of him. However, suddenly, for some reason, Pratima asked everyone to leave, saying, "It's okay, Balakrishna is fine now and he needs to rest. You all don't need to worry too much. Please go back to your homes, and if you feel like it, you can visit tomorrow since we all live nearby anyway." The relatives had no choice but to accept Pratima's request, and one by one everyone left by around 11 p.m. Now, everyone had already left Balakrishna's house, but Pratima's brother, Sandeep, was still staying there because he was very concerned about his brother-in-law. However, when Pratima saw that only Sandeep was left in the house, she told him, "Brother, you should also go home now. If you feel like it, you can come back tomorrow. But for now, let Balakrishna rest." But Sandeep replied, "If something is needed suddenly, I'll be here to get it, so I'll stay here for the night." Pratima, however, told him, "We don't need anything for now, so you should go home. If anything comes up, I'll call you myself." Sandeep didn't really want to leave, but Pratima insisted and sent him home. Now, everyone had left for their respective homes, and Pratima also went to sleep by 12 a.m. But around 3:30 a.m. on October 20th, she woke up to drink some water. However, before lying back down, she glanced at her husband and saw that Balakrishna wasn't breathing at all. Seeing this, Pratima panicked and immediately called her in-laws, crying. She told them, "I've been trying to wake Balakrishna up, but he's not responding at all. I don't know what's happened to him. Please come over quickly." By 2024, Balakrishna had started living separately from his parents with his wife and children. Hearing this, Balakrishna's parents became extremely worried because they had just recently left him safe and sound at his house. After that, Pratima called her brother, Sandeep, and said, "I don't know what's happened to your brother-in-law. He's not moving at all." Hearing this, Sandeep was completely shocked. Pratima then called some more relatives. But just minutes after Pratima made those calls, by 4 a.m., all the relatives who had been sent home by 11 p.m. had gathered back at the house. However, this time they found Balakrishna lying lifeless on the bed. Still, they called a local doctor, but he confirmed that Balakrishna had passed away. Everyone assumed that the illness Balakrishna had been suffering from had taken his life after he returned home from the hospital. That's what everyone believed, until suddenly Sandeep walked up close to Balakrishna's body and examined it. That's when he noticed 2 red marks on Balakrishna's face and neck. Seeing this, he was a little shocked because when Balakrishna was discharged from the hospital on October 19th, those marks weren't there. Now, Sandeep started feeling suspicious, so he pulled his sister, Pratima, aside from the rest of the relatives and asked her, "I just saw some strange marks on Balakrishna's face and neck. Did anyone come to the house after we left last night? Because this doesn't look like a natural death to me. Balakrishna couldn't have died so suddenly." In response, Pratima told her brother, "No, after you all left, no one came to the house." She then added, "Actually, around 3:30 a.m., I went to the kitchen to drink water. When I was about to lie back down after drinking it, I saw that Balakrishna wasn't breathing. That's when I got scared and tried to wake him up, but he wasn't moving at all. I panicked even more, so to wake him up, I threw an empty water bottle from our room at him, thinking that if he felt pain, he might react. But Balakrishna didn't move at all. Instead, the bottle left those 2 injury marks on his face and neck." But countering his sister, Sandeep says here that he doesn't think these 2 marks are from a bottle. However, since it was his sister who was telling him this, he ultimately refrains from asking too many questions and instead starts consoling Balakrishna's parents. Meanwhile, the morning sun of October 20th rises, and by then all the distant relatives of Balakrishna's family arrive at their home. In a way, all the preparations for Balakrishna's final rites are in place. But Sandeep still has a lingering doubt in his mind. He actually wants his brother-in-law Balakrishna's body to undergo a post-mortem examination to determine the real cause of his death. Now, in Balakrishna's case, either his wife, Pratima, or his parents needed to approve the post-mortem. Since Sandeep had already spoken to Balakrishna's wife, his sister, Pratima, he decides to talk to Balakrishna's parents. He then speaks with his brother-in-law, Balakrishna's father, Sanjava Pujari, and shares his doubts. Sandeep tells Sanjava, "Uncle, I don't think Balakrishna's death was natural, so you should consider getting a post-mortem done. From all the cases we have covered in India so far, one thing has become clear. Many people in India either refuse to allow post-mortems or consider them to be something inappropriate. Some believe that dissecting a deceased person's body is not right. However, in this case, Balakrishna's father was educated, and when Sandeep showed him the red marks on Balakrishna's face and neck, he agreed to the post-mortem. After this, Sanjava Pujari completed all the necessary legal formalities for the post-mortem, and on October 21st, Balakrishna's body was sent to a nearby hospital for examination. The following morning, on October the 22nd, after the post-mortem was conducted, the hospital staff returned Balakrishna's body to his parents. That same day, Balakrishna's family performed his final rites. The day after the funeral, on October the 23rd, Sandeep asks his sister, Pratima, "Sister, are you absolutely sure that no one came to your house during the night of October 19th to 20? In response, Pratima once again denies it. But what Sandeep says next shakes her to her core. Sandeep tells her, "Your husband, Balakrishna, and I were well aware that you were having an affair with a 28-year-old man named Dilip Hegde." Hearing this, Pratima is completely stunned. But Sandeep's next question to his sister is, "Sister, was Dilip Hegde at your house on the night of October 19th? Even to this, Pratima replies that nothing like that happened. However, she then asks her brother Sandeep how he found out about Dilip. Sandeep responds, "Balakrishna had already told me that my sister was having an affair with a man named Dilip Hegde. Dilip Hegde was the son of a well-known businessman in Udupi, whose father owned several bars and clubs in the city. Although Dilip lived in Mumbai when COVID spread worldwide in March 2019, he had to return home to manage his family business. Even after returning home, and he stayed inside because there was a lockdown at that time, and he spent some of his time on Instagram. During this period, he came across Pratima one day, and as they continued talking, they became good friends. That's when he found out that Pratima lived in the same city as him, so they decided to meet in person. Coincidentally, their first meeting went so well that it marked the beginning of their regular meetups. However, in the meantime, Pratima's husband, Balakrishna, once saw her with Dilip. That's when Balakrishna confronted his wife, Pratima, but she refused to listen to him and kept meeting Dilip. So, Balakrishna then told his best friend, Sandeep, that his sister was having an affair with a guy named Dilip. After learning this, Sandeep felt very uneasy and later advised his sister, saying, "You have been married for 16 to 17 years, and you both have 2 children, so you should not keep Dilip in your life anymore." After hearing this from her brother, Pratima realized that she was indeed making a mistake, so she assured him that she wouldn't repeat it in the future. However, after that, neither Balakrishna nor Sandeep ever suspected that Pratima was still in contact with Dilip. But when Balakrishna passed away and Sandeep saw red marks on his face and neck, his first suspicion immediately fell on Dilip. That's why, once again, Sandeep asked his sister, Pratima, "Look, if you're hiding something, tell me the truth now. Otherwise, if the post-mortem report doesn't confirm natural death, I will not spare the person responsible for his murder." Hearing these words from her brother, Pratima finally confessed at the last moment, saying, "Yes, on the night between October 19th and 20, after everyone had gone home, Dilip Hegde came to our house. First, he threatened me with a knife, and then he smothered Balakrishna with a pillow, killing him." However, Sandeep still didn't believe his sister's words. He felt that Pratima was still hiding something and lying about the fact that only Dilip was responsible for Balakrishna's death. Once again, Sandeep warned his sister, Pratima, saying, "Look, sister, the post-mortem report will come out sooner or later, so if you are hiding anything, tell me right now." Hearing this, Pratima became extremely nervous, and at that moment she pleaded with Sandeep, saying, "Brother, I will tell you everything honestly, but please save me from the police and legal formalities." After this, Pratima finally revealed the truth to her brother, Sandeep, saying, "On October 19th, I intentionally did not allow any relatives, not even you, to stay at our house. I did this so that I could help my boyfriend, Dilip, kill Balakrishna. Actually, on the night between October 19th and 20, at around 1:30 a.m., when both of my children were asleep, Dilip quietly entered our house. I had already left the main door open for him. Moreover, before entering, Dilip called me from outside to confirm whether my husband and children were asleep. As soon as I gave him the signal, he sneaked into the bathroom of my room and hid there. A little while later, I let Dilip out of the bathroom myself. After this, Dilip suddenly picks up a pillow lying nearby and presses it firmly against Balakrishna's face. At this point, Balakrishna had regained consciousness and made every effort to fight back against Dilip to save his life. However, in the meantime, Pratima also helps Dilip by sitting on Balakrishna's chest to restrain him further. She also firmly holds both of his hands. Now, Balakrishna was completely helpless, and after a few minutes of struggle, he became completely still. Dilip then removes the pillow from Balakrishna's nose and checks his breathing and pulse to confirm his death. Once they realize that Balakrishna has stopped breathing, Dilip quietly opens the main door of the house once again, gets into his car, and drives away. After this, Pratima locks the main door of her house, and at that time it was 2:30 a.m. Pratima believed that, after all, Sandeep was her own brother, so he would support her. Although Sandeep assured Pratima that he would stand by his sister and not reveal anything to anyone, deep down, he had started considering his brother-in-law, Balakrishna, even more important than his sister. That's why, during their entire conversation, he silently turned on the recorder on his cell phone. But Pratima was unaware of this, so when she confessed that she had killed Balakrishna with the help of her boyfriend Dilip, the entire conversation was recorded. Later that day, Sandeep takes the recording to a nearby police station, plays the audio for the officers, and tries to file a murder complaint against his own sister. However, after listening to the audio, the police tells Sandeep that if this information is true, they can take action only after the post-mortem report is released. Until then, a police team heads to the hospital to get an update from the doctor about Balakrishna's post-mortem report. By that time, the doctor had already prepared the report, and he informs the police that Balakrishna's death was not natural, but rather a case of suffocation-induced murder. Now, the police had both the audio recording as evidence against Pratima and Dilip and Balakrishna's post-mortem report from the hospital. So, a police team immediately arrives at Balakrishna's house and arrests Pratima. On the same day, the police also arrest Dilip Hegde. Later, Pratima and Dilip explain to the police how they met, and Pratima also reveals that after meeting Dilip several times, she fell in love with him. She wanted to marry him, but as long as Balakrishna was alive, it wasn't possible because her brother Sandeep wouldn't let her get a divorce, and Balakrishna himself was not willing to grant one. One day, Pratima confesses her desire to marry Dilip. Hearing this, Dilip is overjoyed because he also wants to marry Pratima. That's when the two decide to kill Balakrishna so that after some time, Pratima can marry Dilip. They begin searching the internet for a way to kill Balakrishna without raising any suspicion. After several days of research, they decide to use slow poisoning, finding a chemical or medicine that Balakrishna would consume without any suspicion, and that would ultimately lead to his death. During this research, they discovered that some chemicals used by school and college students in their class projects in science labs are extremely lethal to humans. However, they also found that these chemicals are very difficult for any ordinary person to obtain because they are provided only in very small quantities to students for experimental purposes. Despite knowing this, Dilip Hegde one day visits a store that sells such chemicals in retail. Before going there, he had created a fake student ID, and upon reaching the store, he says, "I am a medical student and I need some chemicals for my college project." The store owners believe the fake student ID to be real and agree to provide Dilip with the chemicals. However, instead of taking them with him, Dilip pays for them and instructs the store to deliver the order directly to his home. In early July, the parcel arrives at Dilip Hegde's house, and he informs Pratima about it. At the end of July, Dilip hands over the chemical to Pratima and tells her, "You have to mix a small amount of this chemical into Balakrishna's food every day." From that day onward, Pratima begins adding the chemical to Balakrishna's food in very small quantities. Quote, "This was a deadly chemical that directly affected the liver and kidneys. As a result, Balakrishna's health deteriorated rapidly, and he was taken to 4 to 5 different hospitals. After being severely ill and admitted to various hospitals for 2 months, Pratima and her lover Dilip grew increasingly worried that Balakrishna might survive. However, they faced a major shock when, fortunately, the doctors discharged Balakrishna from the hospital on October 19th. Seeing this, Pratima became furious and called Dilip even before Balakrishna could return home from the hospital. In that call, Pratima says that their previous plan didn't work, but they can't wait any longer. So she suggests an idea. Balakrishna has just been discharged from the hospital, and his health hasn't fully recovered yet. They can strangle him to death, making it look like he succumbed to the illness he had been suffering from for the past 2 months. After hearing this, Dilip agrees, and Pratima comes up with a plan to send all their relatives back home on October 19th so they can kill Balakrishna that very night. As part of the plan, Pratima forcefully sent all her relatives, including her parents and brother, back to their respective homes. Later, when almost everyone was in deep sleep at around 1:30 a.m., Pratima called Dilip over to her house. Before entering, Dilip parked his car about 100 meters away from the house. Meanwhile, Pratima had deliberately left the door open, allowing Dilip to silently enter. Seizing the opportunity, Dilip used a pillow to suffocate Balakrishna, with Pratima assisting him. They didn't let go until they were sure he had stopped breathing completely. However, the police later arrested both of them, and they are now behind bars while the case is still ongoing in court. We will continue to monitor this case, and as soon as the court delivers a verdict, we will provide updates on the David True Crime Channel's community post. The entire Ajakar village and the city of Udupi were shocked upon hearing about this case. What made it even more astonishing was that Balakrishna's brother-in-law fought for justice against his own sister. Today, both killers are behind bars because of him. Just imagine if Balakrishna had been cremated without a timely post-mortem, no one would have ever known that he didn't die a natural death but was actually murdered. Sandeep knew that his sister would spend the rest of her life in prison, yet he still chose to stand for justice. Perhaps the biggest reason behind this was his close friendship with Balakrishna. In fact, Balakrishna had often told his family and relatives that he had never met a more kind-hearted and better person than his brother-in-law, Sandeep. That's why, after Balakrishna's death, Sandeep fulfilled his duty and set a different example for the world. So with that, the Balakrishna Pujari murder case comes to an end right here. If you appreciate our efforts, like and share this video. If you haven't subscribed, do so now. Thank you.